Hello, everyone. This is Tony Lawson, CEO and co-founder of Shop Black. Today, I'm joined by Mr. Sangu Delle, the CEO of Africa Health Holdings and the chairman of Golden Palm Investments. How are you doing today, Sangu?
I'm doing great, Tony. Doing great. I just got into Nairobi today from Lagos, and it's an exciting time to be in Africa.
You're jet setting all over the continent, all over the world. Let's see.
The building for the future is never an easy job, but it's what is required.
Yes, sir. Someone has to do it, right?
Exactly.
So you have an interesting background. If you could, please tell us a little bit about how you grew up and your journey to the US and back to Ghana.
Sure. So, I definitely had an interesting background growing up. I always joke that even though I rep Ghana very strongly and fully, and I always take my pattern shots at Nigerian jollof. I'm actually an African mutt. There's a little bit of Burkina Faso in the family, and then from my mother's side, there's Egypt also in the family.
Okay.
So I always joke that it's no surprise that I'm a big Pan-Africanist, and I like doing business on a Pan-African basis. So grew up in a very large family. My mother is one of 8. My father is one of 86. That's not a typo. So you can drop your jaw. My father is one of 86.
Wow.
And after I learned that, a lot of things made sense. My siblings and I used to say, "This man can be cold-blooded," and it's like, well, when you have 85 other siblings scrambling for daddy's attention.
Yeah.
You become built differently. The other cool thing growing up is, my father is a very, very staunch Roman Catholic, and my mother is Muslim. So I had the benefit of also growing up in a bi-religious household.
Interesting.
But I think that the really two very important parts of my upbringing. And the second part is actually what connects to how I got to the US. So the first part is my father is a doctor and a human rights activist. So at the time when I was growing up in Ghana, we had a lot of the civil wars in Liberia and Sierra Leone, and he was actively involved in helping refugees. So I actually grew up. We housed some of them in our home, and some of his other. I literally grew up with refugees from Sierra Leone and Liberia. Which is why to this day, both countries have a very special place in my heart. I really consider Sierra Leoneans and Liberians to be brothers and sisters of Ghana, because they lived with us for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so growing up, when you're a child, you don't really have a filter. You just ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll see these people with different, their limbs have been chopped at different places. And, as a child, I'm asking, but why is it that your own is like this and this man's own is like that? My parents allowed me to grow up in what my high school counselor called benevolent naivety. And so I was a very precocious child. I started reading early from when I was about 2 years old. And I would read voraciously, and because back then, children were to be seen but not heard.
Mm-hmm.
But the good thing for me is my parents did not shut me down. They allowed me to express myself. In fact, I remember I'll go to some meetings with them. There are big people meetings. I'll dress up in my little suit. And me too, I had opinions, and I'll give my opinions. And you could see the other adults ready to give me is this little mosquito speaking? And my parents were just like, don't you dare.
Mm-hmm.
And they engaged with me. So from an early age, it allowed me to believe that my ideas matter.
Yeah.
And this is what I tell a lot of, young parents these days. I'm like, look, it's really, do not dismiss what your children say.
Yeah.
Right? Don't just say, oh, shut up. No. Because the power of validating their ideas and letting them know that their ideas matter is powerful. Yeah. It gave me superb confidence. So I would, so how I got to America and how this story connects to that question you asked. My father was doing some human rights work and there was some faculty from the Harvard School of Public Health that he was partnering with. So they would send materials. And one day I was like 5 or 6. I asked him, what's university? And he tells me, that's where you go to get smart. I said, okay. And what's this Harvard thing? And he goes, his eyes light up and he goes, oh, no, now that's where you go to get really, really smart. And my eyes lit up. I was just like, that's the place. I had no idea. I had no idea what and where it was. If you actually told me at that age to paint Harvard for you, in my imagination, Harvard was in Greece, because what smart meant to me was what I saw in my cartoons. And in my cartoons, smart was, I used to watch these cartoons about Plato and Aristotle, where they wear these togas and they are in these pillars. So that was my imagination of what Harvard was. That you go to Greece, we'll wear togas, we'll sit around in a circle, and some old man will be spitting knowledge. That was really what I thought. And I was excited. So in my benevolent naivety, as TEDGlobal Fellow, my high school teacher said, I wrote a letter to the headmaster of Harvard. Headmaster, because I was in school, that was the head of my school. So I just said, dear headmaster, my name is Sangu. I'm age 5. I think I was 5 or 6. I live in Ghana. This is who I am. And, this is what I hear about your school. So, I think I'm smart, but I want to get really smart. So when can I start? And I pressured the old man. And I remember because it was a weekend. And he said, look, the post office is not even open. I was giving him hammer. So Monday, first thing in the morning, he wanted his peace of mind. So he drove me to the post office. We mailed it, and then he dropped me at school. I was a little bit late for school, but he went to the school and said, please, I need peace. I had to do this. So didn't hear anything, but then about 6 to 8 months later, I get a letter back. And in the letter, Tony, I learned 3 things. The first was, it's not in Greece, so it's in a place called Cambridge, Massachusetts. The second thing the letterhead alone told me is, he's not headmaster, office of the president. And the third thing, the president wrote that, he's very happy to get my letter, but he said, age 5 is a bit too young for Harvard. So that was the third thing I learned, was that age 5 was too young. But he was very kind. He sent me, a Harvard teddy bear and a couple of other things. So he was very kind, sent me a bunch of stuff. And I kept writing. Now, what's interesting is this president was Neil Rudenstein.
Okay. And
I finally got to meet him in person in February 2020 at the 50th anniversary of the Department of African and African American Studies. And I took a picture with him. We connected. We hugged. It was amazing. Because, you have to imagine this was written in about 93. And I didn't meet the guy until 2020. It's incredible.
That's amazing.
It's incredible. Wow. So yes, I stayed in touch, kept writing all the way through Larry Summers, and then eventually found out that Harvard had a summer school program, which was for rising seniors. But I was a freshman at the time. But I sent there was a man called William who was the director of the program. I sent him a copy of all my correspondence with Harvard from age 5. And so he waived that requirement for me. And I had my history teacher at Ghana International School, Manuel Brown, who wrote and said that I'm convinced that Sangu can handle the academic load at a college level.
Nice. And
so on the basis of that, I got accepted in the program, did a fundraiser locally, raised the capital. And then I got to the US for summer school. And then that's when I met these kids at Harvard Summer School. Some of them were taking classes in genetics, and I was amazed because I came from an environment where that sort of exploration was not met very kindly. I actually remember a teacher blasting me because I was very fascinated by. My father did a lot of work with HIV/AIDS, right? He was one of the big leaders in the space here. And I remember he and I have all these discussions about it, and I was fascinated about it. So as I studied it in biology, I kept thinking, okay, this virus keeps changing, right? And that's why it's so difficult to kill, because it will be like this before if you try to kill this, by the time you present it, it's changed its form. And so my thesis at the time, at a young age, I was saying that there was a protein responsible for the replication. So I said, okay, if we can't kill it per se, maybe why don't we focus on just stopping it from replicating? So I mentioned that in biology class and they blasted me. They said, is it in the syllabus? Don't be too forward. That's what they used to tell me that I shouldn't be too forward. So, so I went to sit down in my corner after the blasting, collecting the blasting.
The blasting.
And so now I'm talking to these kids who are telling me that, look, they're taking classes in genetics and they can do independent study. I said, you can do what? This is
independent what? What does independence mean?
I'm like, what? So I said, let me jump on the ship. I like, where can I sign up? And then they were like, they showed me, I saw the bill. These schools are like college prices, $50,000 and up a year. I saw the bill. I said, oh, this one, unless I sell my whole village. And we might even come short. So then they told me that, oh, but you should still apply because these schools have scholarships. I was like, what? Because I was coming, look, in Ghana, it was very simple. If you could afford the school, you went. If you couldn't afford, you didn't go, right? It was not complicated, right? So the schools that were too expensive, you just did not go. There was, so the actual concept, the idea, it really blew my mind. I didn't understand it. I was very confused. I was like, what do you mean? Like, actually, they were looking at me, but I'm like, no, please explain this to me. Help me understand. They said, well, it's 50,000. If maybe all you can afford reasonably is 10,000, then maybe the school will give you the 40,000, whatever it is, and they even have full scholarship. I said, wait. So who is giving that money? Where is that money coming from? They said, they have alums and other people who donated money for this. And I said, but someone who is not from my village, is not from my tribe, is not from my community, is not from my church, is not my family member. It didn't make sense to me. How are they paying for my school? And that really transformed how I thought about philanthropy. That was the first beginning of how it really shaped my philanthropy journey. But I applied and I was fortunate. I got scholarships to to Exeter, Andover, Paddy, Hotchkiss, a whole bunch of these schools. I had no idea what these schools were. To me, all the glossy photos looked great. Yeah. And I ended up narrowing it down to Paddy at Exeter and had just an incredible exchange at Paddy and selected Paddy, and the rest is history. Wow. And that's how I ended up in the US.
Wow, no, that's an amazing journey. And so I guess fast forward to your interest in things finance on the continent. So early in your investing career, you focused on several industries. Now you're focused exclusively on tech. Can you explain what inspired that pivot and that focus?
Yes. So, when I started Golden Palm Investments 15 years ago, actually, to October 2006. Wow. I know it's sometimes I look and I'm just like, wow, it's been 15 years in the trenches. No wonder the gray hairs are starting to show. So when it first started, the thesis was, I believe strongly that we were going to see a wave of socioeconomic transformation on the continent. And I wanted to play a prominent role in that. And so we came up with multiple sub-theses under this. So for example, we said, look, I looked at this and with the rest of my team, and I said, urbanization rates are increasing, and I'm a big nerd. As for that, I'm a big nerd. So I'm a big lover of economics, history, and economic history. So I'd looked at global economic history and I said, wait a minute, look at the other parts of the world and look at what happened when urbanization rates increased. Look at what happened when per capita incomes increased. And so you kind of I buy into the broader convergence theory, right? Which is eventually you're kind of going to see this great global convergence where people who kind of move towards, you're not just going to have everyone at the bottom, right? The countries will keep rising. And so I looked at the other parts of the world to study what was going on, and I started to make some predictions. I said, well, with the increased rates of urbanization, what are we going to see happen? We're going to see increased demand for both residential and commercial. property. So immediately we started a real estate company around that, where we were forecasting what the development of the city would look like, given increased urbanization. And we were acquiring lands that will be in that next wave. And then in addition, we thought there was an opportunity around more affordable housing. So, we were kind of going into that. And, so we started a company doing that. Yeah. Then we had another big thesis around, listen, with our demographic explosion and with all these things, like that, and with per capita income increasing, there's going to be increased consumption of food, increased consumption of meats in particular. So we invested in agriculture, and in agriculture we actually did corn farms, mechanized corn farms, cattle. In fact, one of the first projects we ever did was getting cattle from Burkina Faso, where I found that they were trading at 40 to 50% discounts to prices in Accra, and bringing them down to Accra. Yeah. We did aquaculture as well. We did a big investment in aquaculture. Then we had a thesis also on globalization and trading and increased trading, and saying that, look, you're going to see more linkages with China and Turkey and Brazil and all these other markets where our traders are going to get increasingly more global. What does it mean if they get increasingly more global? It means that the demand for foreign exchange is going to increase. So we literally took that thesis and built a chain of forex bureaus. We ended up having about 7 of those, and the thesis played out. So we're coming up with these ideas and just setting up different businesses. We had healthcare. We went into healthcare, but after a point, as you can imagine, you're running all these businesses. Like it reached a point where we were stretched too thin, and so as we were stretched too thin, we had capacity in terms of what we could chew. Around that same time in the US, I was, because I was running the business, but at the time I still wanted to get some more formal training in investment. I wanted to get better at this. And so, I'd done my stint at Goldman Morgan. I was working at Valiant Capital, where I was refining my investment training. And we started getting big into tech. So I remember I was there when Uber first started, and I started using Uber early in San Francisco. I remember seeing, we're one of the early investors in Facebook. We're one of the early investors in Pinterest. We're one of the early investors in Dropbox. So I started seeing all, the tech ecosystem in the Bay Area when I lived there. And I was just like, my eye, like light bulb. I was like, this is going to be even more disruptive on our continent, where we have massive lack of infrastructure and all these other things, where there's going to be tremendous. And of course, look, tech is not a panacea for everything, but I could see that there was going to be significant transformation that we'll see from tech. Yeah. And so, at the time, we basically just then started backing others, and that's how our VC arm was created. And we became very good at it. Because we're also entrepreneurs ourselves. We knew how to find businesses that were good. We knew which entrepreneurs were seasoned and not. We knew the questions to ask. We knew the challenges. And so we're also well positioned to assess those entrepreneurs. So we started backing them. But then over time, about 10 years in, we did a review of the portfolio, and we just said, you know what, we need to double down and focus on our strongest theses. And those theses were tech and healthcare. And even our healthcare thesis has a big tech focus embedded in it. And so we started a process of divesting. And as of today, we've sold off all the other businesses. And we just have our tech VC and our tech portfolio, which we're super excited about. And we continue to make fantastic bets and back extraordinary entrepreneurs. Yeah. And then we have our healthcare business, which as you mentioned in the intro, I'm CEO of, where our big vision is, we're building Africa's healthcare future. And we're super excited about that. We're basically trying to completely transform the healthcare experience. How do we deliver more value? How do we improve healthcare outcomes? How do we make the businesses more profitable so we can invest more in growth and R&D? How do we leverage emerging technologies? And how do we, in all of this, make sure that the patient, the customer is at the center of it all?
That's extremely interesting. So that's definitely, no small task at all, building Africa's healthcare future. Is there a particular reason why you chose this mission apart from the, the economic benefits of focusing on health tech?
Yeah. So, Tony, for me, it was deeply personal. And I'll explain. I mentioned my old man as a doctor, so I literally grew up in the healthcare facility. Literally grew up. My odd jobs were running around the clinics and the hospitals. It was it's second nature to me. That's one part of it. But I'll tell you, the personal part came in when I made a decision. And by the way, I always knew I was coming back. Before I left the Ghana for the US, when I got the scholarship from Petty, I remember I had some friends and stuff who said, "Oh, don't be like those people. Don't go and forget home. Don't go and you won't come back and we'll forget you." And I made a promise to them and I wrote it down. I actually wrote it down where I made a vow before God. And I said, I will go to America. I will take full advantage of all my opportunities there. I will get all the education, I'll do whatever I need. But I will always come back to play my role. I will always come back. That was a vow I made to myself. And so I knew I was always going to come back. It was just a matter of when. Now, when I was coming back, Tony, I'll be very honest, the biggest challenge, the biggest hurdle was health. Why do I say that? Water challenges. I can build a borehole, I can put my poly tank, and I can actually put an automated pump. I've solved it. Electricity, generator, I've solved it. Traffic, I literally chose my office. It's a 5-minute drive from me, from my house. I've solved it, right? Stress, travel, right? So okay, even traffic, get a job. Like there are all these things where you can come up with a solution if you inject capital. Do you know what? No amount of capital, even $10 trillion will not solve. A healthcare infrastructure that's deficient.
Yeah.
So if you are sick and when in a country where we don't even have a single trauma center, if you have a bad accident, we don't have that infrastructure. The closest will be at Akomfo Teaching Hospital in Kumasi. That's the closest. We don't actually have a proper trauma center. And I don't believe we even have one Kumasi is you will have to drive, probably about 4 hours. So I mean, when it's like, in Accra, we don't have a proper trauma. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think we even have one in all of West Africa.
Wow.
Right. I know for sure there's some in South Africa, but I don't think we have some in West Africa. So at that point, I was very worried. I said, look, from a healthcare perspective, as we know, a lot of times, there's nobody I've spoken to, nobody I've met who doesn't have a personal story of a relative, a friend, someone close to you who has had a horrible experience with our healthcare system. People die needlessly. The granddaughter of the Asante king, the late Asante Hene, the granddaughter of our Asante king died in what to me was a clear case of medical negligence, a case that if she was in any place with a competent healthcare system, she did not have to die. Giving birth to her, was it her third or fourth child?
Oh, wow.
Did not make sense. Did not make sense. And so it was clear to me that two things were going to have to happen. It was either I'm going to have to break my vow and not move back to save my life in the event of something, or I'm going to have to fix it so that I would be comfortable moving back knowing that the healthcare infrastructure works.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And so I opted for the harder one.
So you picked the harder choice.
Exactly.
No, that's interesting. So you also mentioned some of your early investments, like in the tech companies, right? So right now, presently, you have invested in a few companies that are now unicorns, actually. So can you give a description or a breakdown of some of those portfolio companies and some others that you're excited about?
Sure, but you see, Tony, is these things you people have been doing that now. All my relatives and village people are every day they are calling me saying, we hear you're now a rich man. You have to be careful about these unicorn announcements. You're creating trouble for me. But yes, no, we've had a phenomenal run. And you know, it's been quite exciting because, like I said, it's easy today to look and say, wow, these guys have these unicorns and close to unicorns in their portfolio, but it didn't look that way when we first started at all. Far from it. I take M Pharma, for example, one of our darlings in the portfolio. We invested in M Pharma at a $1 million valuation when it had no product, no revenues. Yeah, so Tony, you know, like I was saying, M Pharma, right? We invested at a 1 million valuation where they had no revenues, no product. Greg Roxon, the CEO, sketched it on a napkin when we were in Lusaka. And you look at them today, operating in 8 African countries, won the School Award for Social Enterprise of the Year. I mean, just doing extraordinary work, extraordinary work in trying to bring down, I mean, they've been able to bring down the drug price of breast cancer by 50%. Wow. Using their software to aggregate data, because their, you know, the mission is to ensure that all Africans can get access to medication when we need it, and also to get access to affordable medication. Yeah. And they're leveraging scale by using their software to kind of aggregate demand. You know, take Andela, which we were fortunate to have been one of the earliest investors in, now a unicorn. And Andela, I mean, it's a principle we loved. Andela is founded on a simple principle that brilliance is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. Right? And so what we're simply saying is, listen, the guy in Lagos, the guy in, you know, Lusaka, the guy in Cairo, these people are just as talented, right? And can do, all they need is opportunity. Yeah. And so Andela is really trying to create that opportunity. And the beauty of what Andela has been doing, and what I love about that model is, it's not creating brain drain, because the people are doing the work remotely from the continent. And it's starting to create what my good friend Idris from Lofty Capital calls the Andela Mafia, where you see what Andela alumni are doing now. It's actually incredible. They've much like what the PayPal Mafia have done. The Andela Mafia have gone out to create all sorts of startups in the ecosystems. And I mean, if you trace a lot of the leading startups, a lot of them are Andelans. Wow. You know, so it's been quite incredible. Flutterwave is another one of our highest conviction bets. We were the first investors in it, and we're so excited. We invested in Flutterwave at a 2.5 million valuation. And Flutterwave is now a unicorn. And I'm sure you saw on Bloomberg that they had been approached with a $3 billion valuation offer. Yeah. And it's really, it's just so incredible to see, Tony, because this was unimaginable. Like when we first started, like that, when I first started, you told me that, hey, these companies will, I believe so much in these companies, right? And I had full conviction. Yeah. But if you told me honestly that these companies will become unicorns in such a short period of time, I would have said, whatever you are, I would have said, whatever you are drinking, pass me some. You know, it's been incredible. And others, and there are lots of others. You know, we've been very active in Egypt recently. We invested in a company called Ella, that's in the logistics space. We invested in a company called Exab. We invested in a company called Minli. So we're super excited about Egypt. Egypt, we've been very, very active in. We've another darling of ours, Soko Watch. It's incredible. They are basically doing what M Pharma is doing, but for moms and pops stores, right? So they figure out, how do your mom and pop store that's selling Unilever products, for example, how much margin are they making? So what these guys say is, look, why don't we aggregate demand across the board? And then you do directly with so you're able to reduce the price these guys will pay. And it's a win-win across the board. Now you're able to take that data also. There's a lot of financing things you can do on top of that. You build out the supply chain. And it's exciting. They just even rolled out, Danu, the CEO is just a rock star. They rolled out electric vehicles. for the tuk-tuks, electric tuk-tuks. So I was excited. Yeah. I'm like, because I'm a big climate change person. I'm all for what we can do for us to make sure that we save the environment.
Yeah.
And we need to take action. So I get very excited when portfolio companies take such innovative steps. Jetstream, incredible entrepreneur. Miche Adi, she's just fantastic, powering cross-border trading. Just a phenomenal woman.
That's
there's AutoCheck, ETOP. Look, AutoCheck is a used car marketplace. Mm-hmm. And they basically are able to use their technology to kind of bridge the supply and demand and connect to banks for financing and creating all this value and removing the opaqueness in that ecosystem. And ETOP is an entrepreneur we backed when he was at CAS 45, and that's when we actually had our first exit as a firm at a $700 million exit, $700 million valuation. That was with Frontier Car Group. So ETOP was running the Nigeria ops. Suje was CEO, a dear friends, and it was so it's a space we know and we like. And so after the sale, ETOP moved on to AutoCheck. We backed him, and I mean they've had phenomenal growth and traction. We're thrilled. We're really thrilled.
No, that's amazing. So what are your thoughts on the importance and the potential of Africans and Black people in the diaspora, whether it's in Germany, London, obviously the US, working more closely together on economic and social issues that obviously will benefit us all?
Look, it is critical. It is absolutely critical. I went on a personal pilgrimage to Israel right before COVID. So this was, I think, December of 2019. Mm-hmm. It was an incredible experience. It was on so many levels. I mean, it was personally a deeply religious experience. Just, seeing the tomb of Abraham and seeing where Christ was born and all of that. It shook me also. I got to see some of the Palestinian territories. I mean, it gives you a very different perspective when you see things live. But one of the things I was fascinated about in speaking to people in Israel and trying to understand their development trajectory, you see the critical role of their diaspora, right? Played a critical role, not just in moving back and helping to develop and build the country, but in continuing to this present day to support the country and through, whether it's lobbying for foreign policy in the different places, so their diaspora in the US will lobby to make sure that US foreign policy is favors the diaspora in the UK. The diaspora are committed to ensuring that Israel succeeds and that Israel develops. And similarly, I think that there's a blueprint for that. And this is not, Kwame Nkrumah and our forefathers and our foremothers as well have spoken about this, right? Look, I always say this and I've always believed this. We will never, if we don't, solve and fix the issues and our challenges, right? I personally believe as a Pan-Africanist, I believe that there's an intertwining of our destinies, okay? And if some of our countries continue to be in the states in which they are, you can go to the UK, you will not get any respect there. Right? We need to build and make sure that we also develop, and not develop necessarily according to on our own terms, but we need to make sure that we come together and we take ownership of this socioeconomic transformation. We need to lead it, we need to champion it, we need to do the work needed to execute, and we need to actually ensure that across the board, it's a unique opportunity I see. It's a really unique opportunity I see. I see so many look, in the same way we had the partnership on the civil rights front. Du Bois died in Ghana. All these greats, Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, all these people, they came to Ghana. They came, and there was that partnership where they knew and they recognized that the oppression of Africa is linked to the oppression of African Americans, right? They're all part of that global global structure, right? That oppresses, and that we need to work together. And so that's where you saw a lot of the newly liberated, the newly independent African states use their status at the UN to start pummeling the US on civil rights issues and embarrassing the US, right? In the same way, you also had a lot of African Americans, shedding light on what was going on with our own anti-colonial struggles as well. And so you kind of had this, partnership and this recognition that we need to work together. Yeah. And I think that a lot of that has been lost, and we need to build back on that. That's why I personally, I get very disheartened anytime I see any sort of division between African Americans and African communities, because I always say, we are the same people, we are one. Yeah. Yeah. We need to build together, we need to work together, and we need to ensure that as a united front, I believe that there's so much potential. If you look at the economic, just the GDP of Black America, and you look at the GDP of Africa, there's so much we can do. Yeah. There's so much we can do, and there's so much we should do. And I am an optimist. I believe that together we will be able to create social, economic, and political advancement for all our people across the world.
Well said. Well said. So that being said, like, what advice do you have for those who might be in, let's say, for instance, in the US, that are interested in investing on the continent or having like a greater relationship with the continent? Like, I know one of our mutual friends, Kofi Anku, has his amazing project Mensa Park. And when we published that article, there was like a huge demand and like a huge interest from African Americans figuring out, okay, also this real estate, this housing development exists in Ghana. Okay, sign me up. How do I get there, right? And that just shows like people are looking for like the blueprints, like the checklist, like what do I need to do to connect more? Like, what are your thoughts on those who are interested on a business, I guess, a business?
I would say the time is ripe, and now, I mean, on our end, on the Golden Palm end, for example, we've been making strategic efforts to connect with more investors of color. And I say this because part of, we're having tremendous success, but we want to make sure that who's benefiting from that? Yeah. That's the question, right? Who's actually benefiting from that? And we don't just want a situation where Africa's growth trajectory and the incredible economic opportunities, if this ends up only benefiting the colonizers, then we failed, right? We failed. So it's really important to ensure that, and that's why we've really been making a lot of efforts to say, look, how do we engage more with our community? How do we get them to invest more here so that they can also benefit from the rise? They can be connected with what's going on here. And the other thing I'll say is not just a one-way street, right? We also have people with significant capital and growing on the continent. We also need to take our capital and also invest it in our brothers and sisters across the Atlantic. Okay, I have been myself and a group of some of my friends, Indu, Jarrell, Olivier, and a few others. We have a group together, and we've been invested in entrepreneurs of color in the US. Okay, right. There've been one notable one, Meaningful Gigs, Ronnie Coleman based in DC, and so that's a thesis that I am very passionate about, and I say that I want to invite and I want to welcome African Americans, brothers and sisters, to invest on the continent, and of course to shine your eye well, because we have to be, they need, there has to be some, you hear lots of horror stories. So part of it is to really make sure that this is done properly. That's why governance is so huge for us, and just making sure that people do things the right way and are able to actually have a lot of success stories, which will then stimulate even more investment. But at the same time, I'm also calling for Africans to also invest in African American communities, right? Let us stop taking our capital and stashing it in Swiss banks and buying places in London. Let us go to African-American communities and let us invest. There are lots of great opportunities and we see it. Look at what happened with Shea Moisture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, look at the story of Shea Moisture. There are opportunities.
Yeah.
Let's invest in Black-owned businesses. Let's invest in Black-owned enterprises. Let's invest in Detroit and Oakland and all these places where we have great concentrations of our communities, and let's make it happen. We can't wait for others to do it. We need to be active in doing it ourselves.
Hey, I couldn't have said it any better than that myself. So Sangu, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. Keep doing the amazing things that you're doing with your companies, and I know that we'll be hearing much more from you and about your portfolio companies very soon.
We hope so. We hope so. Thank you so much, Tony. This has been great. I'm a big fan of your work as well, and I think what you're doing is wonderful. So keep doing it. Keep putting a spotlight on Black-owned businesses, and let's rise together. And to any of the viewers or readers of the article or the video who are interested in getting involved, they should get in touch with us. LinkedIn, social media, whatever it is. We'd love to see ways in which we can partner and we can grow together. Yeah,
if you want, drop your what's the best email, what's the best website to go to get in contact with you about these things.
sdelle.com, SDELLE.com, Sangu, SANGU @sdelle.com. Happy to hear from people and figure out ways in which we can work together and we can drive the dream of a future world where our grandchildren will look back and say, you mean this? They won't believe it when we tell them stories of the past.
Yes,
because
indeed.
We would have built a different reality.
Yes, indeed.
So let's let the hard work begin.
All right, man. Well said. You have a great day and we shall talk soon.
All right. Take care. God bless.
Care.